Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Haunted Basement Studio. I'm your host, Triple B, and in this movie review, I'm going to be talking Cobweb. And this movie just came out. And is this movie good? It is damn good. So stay tuned for a crazy ass horror story movie review right now. 1 week before Halloween, a young boy Peter walks into his elementary school. He has no friends. When he gets home from school, he practices piano with his mother. And then he plays all alone in his room, throwing the ball up against his wall. As Peter lays down to fall asleep, the moonlight shines bright through his window and shines right on the big wall in his room. As he falls asleep, he hears soft scratching coming from the wall, and then he hears knocking. He turns around real fast and looks at the wall. He keeps on hearing it. Light knocking at 1:45 in the morning. He puts his head down on his pillow and closes his eyes. And then a loud knock comes from the wall. He bounces up out of bed with his eyes wide open, looking at the wall. And then he takes a deep breath in as he is really scared. Soft thud comes from the wall. Peter gets out of bed and runs over to the light switch and turns it on. He walks over to the window and he looks outside into his backyard. There is a small pumpkin patch and there is a swing that is swinging in the wind. The shed door is slamming from the wind. He closes his blinds to his window and turns around and he looks at the wall. He slowly makes his way over to the wall, step by step. Soft knocking comes from the wall. Peter puts his ear up against the wall to listen. He taps the wall 3 times with his fingers. Nothing happens. And then he taps it again 3 times. And then all of a sudden, 3 loud knocks come from the other side of the wall. He runs into his parents' bedroom. He wakes up his mom and dad and he says, "I heard something." "What did you hear?" his mother says. And they slowly walk back into his bedroom. She says, "This wall," and she knocks on it and nothing happens. And then she knocks on it again. "I don't hear anything," she says. She asks Peter, "Do you?" And he shakes his head no. This is an old house. There is bound to be some bumps in the night. And you have a beautiful imagination. And all those scary things, well, they're just in your head. And she kisses him and tells him good night. In the morning, Peter gets on his school bus where he gets tripped and pushed down on the floor by the bully kids, and they're laughing at him. His class starts and they are introduced to a new substitute teacher named Mrs. Devine. She introduces herself and the bully looks at Peter and says, "I can't wait till recess." When recess comes, Peter stays in his classroom and tells Mrs. Devine that he doesn't like recess. She asks him, "You don't want to play with your friends?" He shakes his head no, indicating that he has no friends. She says, "Well, you can help me with the Halloween decorations." And all of a sudden, the spider climbs on the desk and it scares him and he jumps up. But the teacher puts the glass cup over the spider and then a piece of paper underneath it to trap the spider in the glass cup. And they walk over to the window to let it out as if they were freeing a spider from a trapped place. Later that night, Peter and his parents are having dinner and he asks them, "I want to go trick-or-treating. I want to dress up like the other kids." And his father says, "Well, Pete, you know that house at the end of the lane with the boarded windows?" "Yeah, what about it?" "Well, a few years ago, before you were born, a little girl who lived there, well, she vanished on Halloween night." "What happened to her?" Well, I really don't know. She went out trick-or-treating and she disappeared. And now Mother looks at him and says, it was a very traumatic event for everybody and even for me. I do not like to remember it. And Peter looks up at them and says, am I gonna disappear? Mother reaches out her hand and grabs Peter's arm and says, of course not. We would never let that happen to you, ever. Peter now is laying on his bed and he's staring at the wall as he slowly drifts off and falls asleep. Scratching comes from the other side of the wall and the wallpaper slowly is opening. You can hear the clock go tick tock, tick tock. Peter all of a sudden hears a girl whisper his name, Peter. And it scares him out of his bed. She says, I am here. Please don't tell anyone. He yells, Daddy. And his daddy slowly opens his door. And Peter is standing, staring at the wall. And his father says, what is it? He's like, I hear something. His dad shakes his head, says, haven't we already been through this? All right, where at? And he points at the wall, and his dad puts his head up against the wall and he listens, but he doesn't hear anything. Peter is shaking with fear as his dad turns to him and says, you know, I bet it must be rats. I think I got something that can take care of this. And the next morning, father takes Peter out to the shed where he grabs a bag of rat poison. Peter smells it and says it smells like cinnamon. Father says not everything is as sweet as it seems, so be careful with that. Father says sometimes you have to make tough decisions to protect your family. Do you understand, Peter? Mm-hmm. The next day at school, Peter draws a picture of him lying in his bed saying, help me, with the wall getting blacker and blacker. Miss Devine is concerned about the drawing, so she goes over to the house after school and she shows Peter's mom the drawing. And she says Peter has an over exaggerated imagination, and then a thud comes from inside the house. He still wakes me and his father up in the middle of the night with fantasy things. I do appreciate you. And she turns around and goes back inside and leaves Miss Devine out on the porch. Mother now shows the drawing to Peter and he says, what? What is this? He says it's nothing. It's just some scary drawing. Are you trying to tell them something? Mother, no, I'm not. It's just a scary drawing. And as Mother walks away, Peter whispers, she is. And then Mother turns around and says, your imagination is going to get you into trouble one day. And she turns around and slams the door. That night at 2:15 in the morning, knocking comes from the wall and wakes up Peter. He hears a young voice faintly saying, Peter. And then 3 knocks come. Peter. He turns on the light. He says, I hear someone. Peter, don't be scared. I just want to talk. Please be quiet. Peter, please be quiet. He says, I'm scared, but I just want to talk. Please be quiet. You're not real. Maybe, or maybe I am. Peter, you are not imagining things. I am real. And it seems like you could use a friend. But if you don't want one, well, I guess I'll just leave. And then footsteps starts to walk away and Peter says, no, wait, I'm sorry, please stay. The next day at school, the class is painting pumpkins and Peter's pumpkin is the teacher's favorite. And the bully looks at Peter with jealousy in his eyes. And after school, when they are walking home, the little boy pushes Peter down and smashes his pumpkin. Peter's head slams off the concrete as the boy jumps up and down on his pumpkin. That night in bed, a young girl you can hear say, "Are you there? Are you okay? Why are you crying? Did somebody hurt you?" Peter says, "Yes, Brian, the bully, he shoved me down today. I was afraid of something like that would happen. I'm afraid you would get hurt. But I believe in you, Peter. I bet you are strong enough to stand up for yourself if you just try." The next day in class, Brian's mother walks into their room, and Brian is holding a pumpkin to replace the one that he smashed the prior day. The whole class is laughing at him, saying, "Busted." Peter doesn't even acknowledge Brian's replacement pumpkin. Peter just stares at him, and he hears a little girl's voice saying, "Show him that you're not afraid of him." And he waits for the bell to ring at 3 o'clock. Brian walks out of the classroom and down the hallway. Peter slowly stalks behind him. And as he gets to a set of stairs, Peter pushes Brian down the stairs, where he tumbles over and over. And Peter looks down at Brian, and he's screaming, and his leg is completely turned around and broken. Peter ends up getting expelled from school, and mother and father are not happy with him. Father says, "Explain to me, Peter, what happened?" "I didn't mean for him to fall down the stairs." "How did this all start?" And mother jumps in and says, "Well, it started with this picture. I should have told you sooner." "What are you telling me? What's in this picture?" "It's him in this bedroom, and someone is calling out for help." And father looks into his wife's eyes, and he nods his head. He says, "Peter, why would you draw a picture like that?" "I really heard her," he replies. "No, you did not. You are grounded." And mother says, "Okay, Peter, now let's go to your room." "No, no, no," father says. "Carol, he is grounded. He is going to the basement now." As he slides the refrigerator door over, there's a door behind it with a lock on it. And Peter gets really scared as he sees the lock. His mother walks over to it and unlocks it as his father stares at him. He says, "Stand up." I said, "Stand up. Get up now." And as they walk down the stairs with cobwebs all around, mother looks at father and he tells Peter to sit. "We're doing this because we love you." Mother then turns around and walks back up the stairs. As father turns around and looks at Peter for the last time, he turns off the light and goes back upstairs and leaves Peter in the darkness. He slams the door, and you hear the refrigerator moving back in place, covering the door. Peter says, "Hello? Are you there? Please talk to me." As if Peter was left alone in the darkened basement. And now the principal is talking with Miss Devine. He's saying, "You went over to a student's house? You just can't do that. I understand that you are worried about a student, but if he came to you with bruises, if he was talking about something that little kids his age shouldn't be talking about, then I understand. But if not, you just have to leave it alone. If you get too involved, it will eat you alive." She says, "Well, have you seen his mother? There is something off about her." He says, well, there was this tragedy that happened in their neighborhood years ago, and that would make any parent overprotective. Peter's now in the basement and he's exploring, and he finds a chain that leads to a trap door that drops 20 feet down into a chamber. There is a teddy bear at the bottom of the chamber. And now Miss Devine is grading the papers and she sees Peter's last math test. She decides to write her phone number on the top of it and bring it to the house and to see if Peter is okay. And maybe he will see the number. And as she walks to the house with faded white paint, the leaves are falling down on the ground. Halloween is among us. She walks up the porch stairs and knocks on the door. The washing machine keeps on making noises. The doorbell rings and Mother looks up, and then she walks through the hardwood floor with her heels making click, clack, click, clack. She walks on the rug, nothing. As she walks over the rug, back on the hardwood floor, click, clack, click, clack. And then she opens up the front door. Mother now looks at the teacher and she says, hello. She says, hi, I brought Peter's last math quiz. Well, thank you for coming by. And then Father walks out and she says, oh, this is Mrs. Devine. This is Peter's former teacher. Well, it's nice to meet you. I just came by to drop off his last math quiz. Oh, that's wonderful. We can hang it up on the fridge. Please come in. We just made coffee. Father is carrying a hammer as he pulls out a chair and says, have a seat. He puts the hammer down on the counter and pours a cup of coffee. As Mother hangs the final math quiz up on the refrigerator, the washing machine is making thumps. Father's arm is bleeding. He says, oh, it's just from a little nail accident. Doing some remodeling. I just wanted to express how sorry I am for what happened. Well, that is very sweet of you, but honestly, no apology necessary. Peter is a very spiritual little boy. Well, do you have any idea where he's going to be going to school? Of course we do, here at home. Carol is the best teacher Peter could ever have. What? Do you not think that's a good idea? No, I just think that given his behavior, he might benefit from an environment more suitable towards his needs. And now Mother says, we are not giving our son away. And Father says, I know we are not. He needs a family, and family is what he is going to get. Well, where is he? He's grounded in his room. Well, may I see him? No, you may not. And I don't think this is appropriate. I just want to say goodbye to him. And Mother says, what is your interest with my boy? You are no longer his teacher, and I find it very strange that you come to me and you continually show up to my house. I just wanted to make sure that he was all right. What kind of mother do you think I am to harm my child? As Mother keeps yelling at Miss Devine, Father tries to calm her down, but the yelling gets louder. Peter now walks up the stairs and he starts banging on the door that's behind the refrigerator. The washing machine is tumbling over and over. There are screams, and Peter's kicking the door behind the washing machine. Miss Devine cannot hear it. She cannot hear Peter, with Mother crying, upset. Father tells Miss Devine, I think it is time for you to leave. She says, I am so sorry. This was a mistake. As she grabs the purse and she walks towards the front door, the washing machine is slowly stops. father grabs his hammer and walks right behind her. With banging continues from the door. She turns around and father is standing right behind her with his hands behind him. The banging continues. And she asks, "What is that?" She says, "What is that banging?" He says, "What?" "Oh, it's the washing machine." As it turns on, he says, "I think it is time for you to go." As he leads her out to her car holding his hammer. Nightfall comes and Mother is preparing pumpkin cupcakes. Peter is laying on the cold concrete floor in the basement. He hears the door open up, and through the darkness, he sees his mother walking down the stairs. She is carrying a plate of cupcakes. "This is for you, my darling. It is time for you to come back upstairs. Pumpkin cupcakes for my pumpkin," she says. And now, as she bathes her, father is in a doorway and he says, "Peter, you had time to think." "Yes." "About what?" "To stop acting out, to stop telling lies." Father says, "I love you, Peter, and we forgive you." And Peter says, "I love you too." They let Peter sleep in his room tonight. Other than the basement, he lies in his bed and he waits for his parents to go to bed. As he hears them click off their light, he knows that it is time. And he walks over to the wall and he knocks, but nothing happens. He knocks 3 times and nothing happens. He says, "Please talk to me." And then all of a sudden, scratching and knocking comes from the other side of the wall. A little girl's voice says, "What happened to you?" Peter says, "My mom and dad locked me in the basement." "Well, you have to be careful with them. They they're not what they seem." "I want to see you," Peter says. No, you can't. I've been in here too long, and you will scream, and you will get us caught," the little girl says back to him. He says, "No, I will not be afraid." She says, "Okay, come down to the bottom of the wallpaper." And you can peel it open, and there is a hole there. And as he gets on his knees and he pulls open, which reveals a round circular hole, he looks through it, and all of a sudden an eye appears from the other side of the wall, and it scares Peter half to death. And he falls back and he says, "Who are you?" And the little girl says, "I am your sister. I have been waiting for you. I have been waiting for you to get big enough." Peter says, "Big enough for what?" "Big enough for you to move the clock that hides the door, and big enough for you to help me escape and leave the dark. Mom and Dad, they put me in here, and they are evil. And your time is coming, Peter." Peter now is sleeping in his bed, and he hears banging on the door, and he thinks it's the morning, so he pulls the covers off of his head. But it is still nighttime. He says, "Mother," but nobody's there. And all of a sudden, he hears Father say, "Peter." He looks over, and his father is standing in the corner with his eyes all rolled back and his teeth clattering. And he stops and he looks up at Peter and he says, "Look what you did to your mother." Now Peter looks up down the hallway and he sees his mother standing there with demon eyes. She starts to run at him, and the lights go out, and she disappears, but there's footsteps running towards him, but nothing's happening. And all of a sudden, you hear footsteps running all around everywhere and bangs on the wall. And then out of the darkness, his mother jumps on top of his bed and starts to choke him. He wakes up as his mother is holding him, and she is saying, "You were screaming. You were having a nightmare. Do you remember what it was?" And he thinks back, and his mother was choking him in his dream. He just looks up at her and says, "I can't remember." She says, "Well, that's good. It can't hurt you now." And he looks up at his mother, and now he is even more scared. Peter now is talking to the little girl in the wall, and he's asking her, "Why are you in there?" She says, "Mother and father hate me. They put me in here, and they will kill me. And when they do, then it will be your turn, and they will put you in the walls." Peter says, "No, there's no way mother and father has ever killed anybody." And that's when the little girl says, "You are wrong, Peter. They've already done this, and I will tell you where they buried the little girl they killed. It's out in the pumpkin garden, and I'll tell you where." Mother now is upstairs, and she's moving the grandfather clock, and she's holding an empty glass bottle of water. Meanwhile, Peter's down in the pumpkin patch digging, and he comes upon a white rock, and he starts moving all the dirt around it, and it appears to be a human skull. Mother now looks out of the window and says, "Peter, what are you doing?" And he starts to hurry up. He tries to cover up the dirt. He's covering it up with dirt all around his hands. And his mother steps outside the door and says, "Peter, what are you doing?" Peter turns around, holding a pumpkin in his hand. He says, "Since I can't go trick-or-treating, Mom, can I at least carve a pumpkin?" The little girl now is saying, "It was Halloween when they locked me in here. There was a trick-or-treater that came to our door, and I asked her for help. She saw me. And then our parents, they killed her, Peter. And I do not want to end up like that little girl." Peter says, "I'm going to get you out of here. You're family, and we're going to be a family, a real one." "But how?" the little girl says. "I know somebody I can call." And he pulls out his teacher's phone number that was written on top of the math test. Mother now is downstairs cutting up the pumpkin. Peter runs into her bedroom to use her phone. He picks up the phone and he dials 2 numbers, and then he hears a knock, and he moves away from the phone and he looks out the door to see if his mother is coming. She is not, so he goes back to the phone and he dials the rest of the phone numbers, and then he hears a knock and nobody is coming. The teacher now picks up the phone and Peter says, "I need your help." All of a sudden, a knock comes from behind him and he looks around, but nobody's there. But he turns all the way around and his mother is standing there as he hangs up the phone. His mother is looking right into his eyes, and the phone rings again. She goes over and she picks it up. She says, "Hello." She's like, "Who's this?" "This is Peter's mother." "Well, this is Miss Devine." "And did Peter just try to call me?" She said, "Yes, he did. He misses you so much, and he wanted to tell you that. So I said, well, Peter, why don't you just give her a ring?" And Peter is staring at his mother the whole time, and he knows every word that he is telling Miss Devine. She is lying. And as she hangs up the phone, she says, "I'm sorry to bother you. I hope you have a happy Halloween. That was a very bad thing, Peter. I'm sorry. You called a stranger. She doesn't love you the way that your father and I do. I am very disappointed in you. And then she puts him into his room. But before she shuts the door, she notices the wallpaper. What is this? He says it's nothing. And then she gets on her knees and then she starts to feel the wallpaper and she opens it up and she sees a hole. Mother says, I cannot believe you. And her eyes get really big as she starts to look down the hole. And now Mother is frantic and she's holding her arms and hands up against the wall. As she leaves the room, her hands follow along the long hallway and she looks back at Peter and says, What did she tell you? Just wait until your father gets home. And now the little girl tells Peter, I know they're going to hurt us, Peter. I know that they're going to kill us, Peter. We have to do something. And now Father walks in and he says to Peter, Well, there's something that we got to do tomorrow. We got to dig up the pumpkin patch because it has gotten rotten. A van pulls up outside their house on Halloween. Two teenagers look out the window and say, Cuz, is this the house? And the bully Brian pokes his head out from the back seat and says, Yeah, that's it. And then they drive off with a sinister smile. That night they are eating soup, the doorbell rings, and Mother slams her hands on the table and says, Motherfucker, can't we even eat in peace? You hear the door open. Trick or treat. Get out of here. Mother slams the door and then she walks back over to the kitchen table. Father asks her, Well, was the porch light on? And Mother says, No. Father now takes two big bites of his soup and Mother takes one as well. Father now is realizing that there is something different with the soup. As they both take another bite, he says, Did you do something different with the soup? And Mother looks at him and says, Did I do something different with the soup? No. I mean, it's great. It just tastes a little bit different. Don't you think, Peter? And Peter hasn't even tried his soup yet. Mother takes two big bites and she realizes it does taste a little different. And then she starts to smell it, and Father starts to smell it too. They both say it smells like cinnamon. Father looks at Peter and he realizes he hasn't even eaten his soup. Father puts down his spoons, and then you hear bangs coming from the wall. As he looks at Peter, he asks him, Peter, what did you do? Did you do something? Peter, son, look at me. Tell me the truth. What have you done? What did you do? Tell me, what did you do? And now Peter turns and says to him, You hurt my sister. And Mother says, What did you say? And Father says, Oh my God, call 911. Oh my God. Now Father starts to feel the effect from the rat poisoning. His stomach is growling. He's bent over. Mother grabs the phone to call 911. She pulls the phone off the receiver, but the line has been cut. Peter now runs out of the kitchen as he watches his father puke up blood all over the table. And the blood doesn't stop coming out until he dies. And his body hits hard lump on the hardwood floor. Peter slowly walks away as his mother grabs a knife and starts running after him. And he is running up the stairs, and Mother is behind him, swinging the knife, screaming. He reaches the top of the stairs, and she jumps and grabs his leg. And then she is holding the knife and she's getting ready to swing on him. And then all of a sudden, she starts to puke up blood. She is gargling. But with one last attempt, she lures at Peter, but he kicks her in the face and she goes tumbling down the hardwood stairs. Thump, thump, thump. As back of her head hits the bottom floor wall, the grandfather clock strikes 6 p.m. Peter now makes his way down the stairs to Mother's body. She is all twisted up. Her arms are broken. Her neck is broken, and there is blood coming from underneath her body. As he steps over her body, she grabs his leg and says, "Do not let her out. Do not let her out." And she dies. Peter now goes and runs up the stairs and he uses the key to unlock his mother and father's bedroom door. He runs to the grandfather clock and he's trying to move it out of the way. You hear a little girl whisper, "Peter, is that you? Peter, are they gone?" Peter says, "I think so." "You have the keys?" "Yeah." "Can you move the grandfather clock? Be careful, it is heavy." As he puts all of his strength into it and he wiggles it and it inches out slowly but surely. He is able to turn it and then he's able to knock it on the ground and it breaks all over the place. And there is a door behind the clock. "Can you see it, Peter? Are you all right?" Yes, I'm okay." "Do you see it?" "Yes." And Peter reaches out the key and he puts it in the keyhole. And then he unlocks it. Knocks start coming towards the door. Peter walks backwards from the door, and now the door is about 2 feet high, and it slowly opens up to complete darkness. Peter senses something bad is coming out of the darkness. He runs away as he hears wicked laughter. Now Sister is slowly crawling out of the door on all fours and she crawls up to Peter, who is hiding behind another door, and she says, "That's a good boy, Peter. How did you like watching them die?" And then the doorbell rings, just like that girl in the garden. And now Sister hides the parents' bodies. Now Brian and his cousins are outside the house wearing masks and holding baseball bats. They're saying, "Peter, are you alone in there?" The front door slowly opens by itself. They look in and say, "What the fuck?" "Well, let's get this done." As they walk in and Brian limps on with his crutches. As they look for Peter, he is hiding underneath the bed. "Where the fuck are you, kid?" They go all around the house, destroying it. One of them smashing the piano and breaking all the keys with his baseball bat. And then Brian walks in with his crutches and he slips on some blood from where Mother passed away. And he falls right back on the hardwood floor and his head slams. Peter now is caught upstairs, hiding underneath his bed. As he runs away to hide in another bedroom, the guy downstairs smashing the piano leaves, but before he leaves, he hears the piano keys click. He turns around and he sees Sister's hairs going over the back of the piano and falling on the ground. He walks over to it with his baseball bat, but she grabs him from underneath and grabs his legs and pulls him underneath the piano, and blood squirts everywhere. And now Peter is hiding underneath another bed as sister is picking off the remaining cousins. And you hear her running all around the wall. She is running around the whole house super fast. Young Brian now is laying on the ground. And the bottom of the stairs door opens and he sees Mother laying there dead. And then a spider falls and lands on his head and then crawls down his body. He can't move. He hears sister running all around the house. Brian is looking around and he starts to hear laughter, and then hair starts to start covering all over the top of him, covering him in blackness, and spiders coming out of it. And wicked laughter starts to happen as sister takes Brian down and kills him. She is able to crawl all over the walls and the ceilings, with the last cousin getting decapitated in front of Peter. She is crawling on the side wall towards him and says, "When you were born, they were happy. When I was born, they screamed. So Daddy made me a pit. Then Daddy made me a cage. While you were whining in their warm bed, I was suffering among the cobwebs, the rats. I was suffering, learning how to climb, how to bite, learning how to make you do what I want. Trick or treat, Peter." And then she leaves him underneath the bed with a pumpkin and a decapitated head inside of it. Peter now runs to his parents' room, to where the grandfather clock was. He jumps inside that 2-foot door and he locks it. Mrs. Devine now shows up to the house. She walks into the house saying, "Hello, Peter." She walks into the kitchen. She sees blood everywhere. She's like, "Oh my fucking God." She picks up her phone and then she hears creaks and banging coming from the walls. She looks down and she sees sister's hair leaving the room. Mrs. Devine walks towards that doorway, but all of a sudden she is scratched from behind from sister. She falls on the ground and now she looks up and sister is crawling towards her. She now is running towards the front door between two dead bodies. She turns around and sister is crawling on all fours like a black widow. Miss Devine now makes it to the front door, but it is locked. She turns around, but sister now is gone. She yells, "Peter!" And now Peter yells, "Miss Devine, please run!" She doesn't listen to him. Instead, she heads upstairs towards this boy. As she makes it to his bedroom, she's yelling, "Run! Run!" She makes it to the hole in the wall, and Peter sticks out his hand. He says, "I locked myself in the walls to hide myself from sister." Miss Devine says no, and she breaks the wall and pulls Peter out of it. And they both run downstairs, where Peter pulls out his keys to unlock the front door. Miss Devine runs out the door, but Peter gets grabbed by sister and gets pulled back into the house. And now Peter is in the basement. But now he's in that cave with the 20-foot drop, with the lock cage on top of it. As he's laying there, he sees the teddy bear that he saw before. He grabs it and looks up and thinks there's no way to get out of here. And now sister shows up and unlocks the door. She crawls down with her hair, reaches the bottom of the cage that is 20 feet in the air. She crawls down using her arms and legs. She gets face to face with Peter. And she says, "Not every child can be perfect as you, Peter. It's gone this way, and no one loves a monster." And now Miss Devine walks into the basement where Mother leaves Peter and attacks her from behind. Just as fast as a Black Widow can, a spider can run across the floor. As Sister goes in for the kill, her hair so long, hanging down the cage, Peter grabs it and starts pulling her down, and then he starts climbing up the chamber, using her hair as a rope. As he makes his way to the top, Miss Devine and Peter overpower Sister and throw her into the cage. As she falls down and hits the ground 20 feet below, she jumps right back up and starts climbing up as fast as you can. The chain is coming down from the shuttered door. Right before she gets to the top, they are able to lock her in. Sister says, "Peter, wait, you can't leave me. You're just like me. It's in your blood. You killed Mom and Dad. Now you're just like me." "I'm not like you." "Do you really think this is gonna actually keep me down here? Every night you can be lying there. You're going to be wondering if you locked the door, if you saw a shadow, a creak in every room, every tap on the wall. You'll think of me. We are family, Peter. I will always be with you. Always."